Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
It's a big day today.
Every day's a big
Starting a
day.
new rule.
Yeah, I know. It's like I feel like we graduated from high school.
Yeah, and we're starting 11. That's
So yeah, Rule 11, which is actually, I think, the final rule on the astral plane.
okay.
So after this, we'll be moving into the physical. So we'll be rounding out the astral plane with this. But anyway, before we get started, is there anything you wanted to say, or should we just get right into it?
Well, if you've been following along with us through these, we are starting a side study of a really pleasant, comfortable books, series of books to read, kind of in what do you call it? What would you say, like an entertainment type of a thing? It's not swaying us off of our study by any stretch of the imagination, but the book series called The Life and the Teaching of the Masters of the Far East by Baird T. Spalding. And we're going to put up a link on transformations1000.com, and we'll probably start putting it in the notes of the videos. It's a really great book. There is a tie-in. It gives some context to everything we're looking at, kind of predates it a bit, but it does absolutely fit in. And it talks about their journey to the East, and to live with the masters and study their life and their work. And these are what we assume to be early theosophists. It's very interesting and entertaining and beautiful, really. And we can learn a lot from seeing the personality aspect of the great ones, I guess you could say, right?
Right.
And how DK fits in there would also be very interesting, because this is written during the time that he would have been there, interestingly enough. Now, beyond that, I don't know much, but I do know that when these books were, and when the blue books, came about and were printed, this other books were being done as well. So he probably does have some play in those books somewhere. So it's very interesting.
I'm sure. Yeah.
You're looking at Moria, Master Moria, Kuthumi, some of DK that would have been there. Now, I didn't see their names mentioned yet or anything like that, but that's where their house was. So anyway, let's get started on this.
What you've read there, what you've read there so far, you said, is bringing some context around what we've been studying here.
Yeah.
So then that might
be. Certainly, this is much more detailed. This is the field mag. This is the FM. This is the technical details that we're looking at of what they had witnessed while they were there. A lot about, I don't say miracles, but transforming energy, working with energy to manifest things, and why and how by law these things are possible.
Mm-hmm.
And how these things are, what is etheric can be made dense, and then what is dense can be made back etheric again, and it almost speeds up the process of the thermodynamics that we witness on the physical plane, but they're not functioning on the physical plane, they're functioning in the spiritual plane. Mm-hmm. So just like there's no time the law is different when you make the shift, and that shift is permanent. What you manifest is different at that point as well. So it is wild, buddy. It very, it shows the contrast.
Gotcha. So it'd probably be a good size study, folks that
Amazing.
want to draw in some more context around materials we cover here. So
I've been reading it, I've been doing my normal daily thing. At night, I would, instead of
Excuse
going
me.
on to something else, I'll sit and read for 30 minutes or whatever on this. And I'm like, find myself sitting at the edge of my seat a bit.
Mm,
And the chapters are short. It's an easy read. And I'm going, oh, this is awesome. And I really want, it'd be cool to be there, to have been there.
gotcha.
So, yeah, I would recommend, and I think you would recommend it. I think Carla certainly is the one who recommended it to us. And then we're just passing it along at that point, right? So.
Yeah. All right. Well, sounds good. Yeah, we can leave that link below. And like you said, on Transformations 1000 as well. So
You want to hit real quick what we're doing? If anybody didn't see our other short commercial about astrology, we're going to be doing a video.
So, yep, we just released a quick little video as well. We're going to be having a special session at some point in the not so distant future, really specifically tied to astrology, where Carla, who some of you might remember from our earlier Treatise on White Magic videos, who got us started here on this journey, will be coming back for an interview style session where we will be asking her questions related to astrology and how it kind of ties into all this. And as you all who have been watching hopefully consistently know, astrology is a major foundation for the spiritual development, and it's certainly changed the lives of the two men you see here on this video. And it got us started on our way. So we'll be doing a special session on that. But like I said, we have a separate video that just kind of mentions that same thing. And so if you'd like to check that video out, please do. We're asking for folks to leave any questions they might have related to astrology, to drop in the comments to that video so that we can take those and then bring them to the table when we have that session with Carla.
Cool.
So now
I'm looking forward. I'm going to ask her questions about the North Node and retrogrades, and about how the energy of the outer planets play into our spiritual growth / transformations.
Yeah.
So that's where my head's at when we're getting into that with her. And any other questions? I'm very curious to hear what everybody's thinking about too. Yeah.
As am I. So.
All right.
All right.
You're gonna get started.
Now that we've gotten our handful of promotions out of the way, let's get back into the reading here. So as we indicated, yes, we're finally on to Rule 11. And for folks that are following in the blue book, that starts us on page 445.
Or 47.
447 with the text, but they always call out the rule on the header page. It looks like it's 445, the two prior to that. Oh yeah. And then on the PDF, it's really the PDF page on 209, but somehow or at least on the version that I have of PDF, has the Rule 11 header on the bottom of page 208, but the text actually starts on 209 in the PDF. So, and as we did last week, since we have the very cool software that we're now using with all of the texts embedded, we'll be reading from that, as you see cast up on the screen. And we have the 7 planes of our solar system chart along the side for your reference, as we do sometimes refer to that as we're reading through. So without further ado, let's start with Rule 11. So 3 things the worker with the law must now accomplish. First, ascertain the formula which will confine the lives within the ensphering wall. Next, pronounce the words which will tell them what to do and where to carry that which has been made. And finally, utter forth the mystic phrase which will save him from their work. And Rule 11 covers 3 specific subsections. First, we'll analyze the 3 sentences that I just spoke in the header there. And then we'll get into talking about the salvation from our thought forms. And then lastly, the salvation from death.
Sweet.
Yes. So let's begin with the analysis of the 3 sentences. So this rule, Rule 11, as you know, is the last of those governing work on the astral plane and the magical task of motivating those thought forms which are to be thought to be the expression of some type of energy. We have considered the various energies with which men work and the power a man can wield through building thought forms. We have seen also how a man can manipulate the various grades of matter until the embodied idea has clothed itself with mental matter and with astral matter. It is therefore a vital entity, on the verge of materializing upon the physical plane. Nothing, it should be noted, can now stop its emergence into objectivity except the expressed act of the will of its creator, or the form, being vitalized by that creator, is subject always to his will until he has served his connection with it by the utterance of the mystic phrase. We will assume that emergence into effective existence is the decision and that the creative work is carried forward. Okay, lost my cursor. There we go. It will here be noted that this work is either conscious or unconscious. In the unconscious building of thought forms, such as is the case with the average human being, many never produce the desired physical plane effects and fail in their intended purpose. As long, however, as man is animated by selfishness and by hatred, this is a beneficent thing. Fortunately for the human race, few people as yet work in mental matter. Most of them work with astral or desire matter, and these forms are fluidic and changeable, and are powerful only through the faculty of persistence. There is an occult basis for the statement that if one desires a thing for a sufficiently long period of time, one will possess it. Such is the law governing the return to incarnation of the average human being. Lacking the one-pointedness of the mental plane matter, as it is influenced by a concentrated mind, these desire forms fail to do the damage they otherwise might. Their effect is felt largely by the creator of these common monastic forms and not by his environing associates. The moment that the mind factor enters in and becomes dominant, that moment a man becomes dangerous or useful, as the case may be, dangerous not only to himself but to those around him, or useful in the working out of the plan of evolution. He can then create thought forms capable of producing outward manifesting results and tangible effects. Given aspiration, however, and spiritual impulse, a man can become a true occultist and produce organized results and functioning organisms upon the physical plane. I use the word organism deliberately, for it will serve to convey the idea that any thought form is regarded by us as a subjective and existing entity, clothed in a subtle matter and capable of manifestation. This is called popularly sometimes the working out of an idea or the carrying through of a project. It is termed at other times a discovery or an invention or something of that nature. All the time, quite unrealizing it, man is talking in occult terms and evidencing an inner appreciation of the methods whereby all that has been thought by God or man comes into existence. That's an interesting statement.
I would say, yes, sir.
So we're always talking in occult terms, but we just might not realize it. Is that what that's saying?
Yeah, Yeah, pretty much every word you say is God, and however we end up hearing it is what we hear.
That's just interesting. Even the silly stuff.
Yeah, it's just like saying God, 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 God. And then, you're interpreting it as, these vibrations as this or that. I guess it's so weird. It is wild. It's the word. And
Very
yeah,
interesting. Okay,
yeah, it's
well,
wild.
that kind of floored me a little bit, but okay. Well, be careful what you say. I guess. I
I
don't
do,
know.
yeah. Yeah,
So,
we gotta be really careful, man.
yeah,
Guard our thoughts
right.
and try, and there's a deeper level of it there because there's intention involved, and
Hmm.
then really sending it forth with power. That changes things too, the sincerity and intention behind it. So yeah, there's a lot going into that.
Okay. The embodied idea or thought, the former being potentially far more potent than the latter, has worked its way through to the verge of physical manifestation. Its creator, who, in the case of a white magician, is not an emotionally centered person, is consciously bringing it to the stage when its inner purpose and plan can be demonstrated. He holds the thought form in his consciousness and gives it shape and energy through the power of his own one-pointed mental focus. We are told in the rule under consideration that the aspirant has 3 things to do. The first, ascertain the formula which will crystallize the form he has built, much in the same way that we find architects and bridge builders reducing the desired form to a mathematical formula. The second, pronounce certain words which will give the form vitality and so carry it forth onto the physical plane. And the third, utter the phrase which will detach the thought form from his aura and so save the drain upon his energies. It will be noted that the formula has relation to the thought form, the words of power, to the objective for which the form has been constructed, and the mystic phase concerns the severing of the magnetic link which binds together the creator and his creation. One therefore concerns the form, another the soul embodied in the form, whose lowest characteristic is desire, the reflection of love, and the last, the life aspect with which the creator has endowed the creation. We are consequently face to face again with the eternal triplicities of spirit, soul, and body. It should be remembered that the rules for magic, as understood by the true esotericist, are as true of a created universe, solar system, or planet as they are true of the tiny thought creations of a chela or aspirant.
Hey man,
Yeah.
what's interesting is,
You-
he talks about the average person. The average person is confusing the whole process constantly with the thoughts that it's the cyclic, thought processes.
Right.
What I think he's saying, because it says this in some of the other books, is, you go up in meditation, you build your thought forms, or I've even heard it, like you go up and do your inquiry or ask the questions that you need or the results you're looking for, but your prayer, send it forward and then leave it and don't go back.
Mhm.
You don't go back
Right.
constantly, because every time you're going back, you're altering something, you're adding some emotion to things, and it gets all wonky.
Mhm.
Supposed to do it, let it go, send it forward, be done with it, and so it is, and so may it be, and so it is, and demand it and send it out, and then let it go. Yeah, and maybe he'll get into that here, but I know that he talks about that in other places, and that's common. I want to say across the esoteric schools, about how to go about this type of manifesting, the proper manifesting.
And I think we have touched on that in previous rules.
Probably from the mental plane discussions here.
Right. And I feel like I've recalled Carla actually talking a bit about that, some of the earlier videos, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, because people are manifesting all sorts of crazy nonsense.
Right.
Selfish stuff.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, but sad but true. So the first reaction of the average student on reading the above is to think immediately of the body nature as it expresses some type of energy. Thus, duality is the thing noted, and that which employs the thing is presented in his mind. Yet one of the main necessities before occult aspirants at this time is to endeavor to think in terms of the one reality, which is energy itself and nothing else. Therefore, it is of value to emphasize in our discussions of this abstruse subject the fact that spirit and energy are synonymous terms and are interchangeable. Only in the realization of this can we arrive at the reconciliation of science and religion, and at a true understanding of the world of active phenomena by which we are surrounded and in which we move. The terms organic and inorganic are largely responsible for much of the confusion and the sharp differentiation existing in the minds of many people between body and spirit, between life and form, have led to a refusal to admit the essential identity and nature of these two. The world in which we live is regarded by the majority as really solid and tangible, yet possessing some mysterious power lying concealed within it, which produces movement, activity, and change. This is, of course, putting it crudely, but it suffices to sum up the unintelligible attitude.
Unintelligent.
Oh, did I say that wrong? Yeah. So this is
Why? Just because it caught me so
Yeah.
oh dang.
This is, of course, putting it crudely, but it suffices to sum up the unintelligent attitude. Yes, that reads much better. The orthodox scientist is largely occupied with structures, relationships, with the composition of form, and with the activity produced by the component form parts and their interrelations and dependencies. The chemicals and elements and the functions and parts they play, and their mutual interactions as they compose all forms and all the kingdoms of nature are the subject of their investigation. The nature of the atom, of the molecule and the cell, their functions, the qualities of their force manifestations, and the varying types of activity, the solving of problems as to the character and nature of the energies, focalized or localized, in the differing forms of the natural or material world, demand the consideration of the ablest minds in the world of thought. Yet the questions, what is life? What is energy? Or what is the process of becoming and the nature of being? These all remain unanswered. The problem as to the why and the wherefore is regarded as fruitless and speculative, almost insoluble. Nevertheless, to the pure reason and thought, the correct functioning of the intuition, these problems can be solved and these questions answered. Their solution is one of the ordinary revelations and attainments of initiation. The only true biologists are the initiates of the mysteries, for they have an understanding of life and its purpose, and are so identified with the life principle that they think and speak in terms of energy and its effects. The planetary hierarchy are based on a few fundamental formulas which concern life as it makes itself felt through its three differentiations or aspects: energy, force, and matter. It should be noted here that only as a man understands himself can he arrive at an understanding of that which is the sum total that we call God. This is a truism and an occult platitude, but when acted upon leads to a revelation which makes the present unknown God a recognized reality. Let me illustrate. Man knows himself to be a living being and calls death that mysterious process wherein that something, which he commonly designates as the breath of life, is withdrawn. On this withdrawal, the form disintegrates. The cohesive vitalizing force is gone, and this produces that falling apart into the essential elements of that which has hitherto been regarded as the body. This life principle, this basic essential of being, and this mysterious elusive factor is the correspondence in man of that which we call spirit or life in the macrocosm. Just as the life in man holds together, animates, vitalizes, and drives into activity the form, and so makes of him a living being, so the life of God, as the Christians call it, performs the same purpose in the universe and produces that coherent, living, vital ensemble, which we call a solar system. This
Oh, yeah.
life
Yeah.
principle.
I was curious, man. I'm
Yeah,
thinking
yeah.
I'm going. He's got to be talking about prana here soon, and the spleen and all this stuff. And here it's right here coming up. This is very interesting stuff here that we're getting into. What's animating us as we're sitting here in
Right.
this gross vehicle that somehow became dense. You know. Now I'm back at the edge of my seat.
All right, let's feed that curiosity. This
Yeah.
life principle in man manifests in a triple manner. One, as the directional will, purpose, basic incentive. This is the dynamic energy which sets the being functioning, brings him into existence, sets the term of his life, carries him through the years, long or short, and abstracts itself as the close of his life at the close of his life cycle. This is the spirit in man, manifesting as the will to live, to be, to act, to pursue, to evolve. In its lowest aspect, this works through the mental body or nature, and in connection with the dense physical, makes itself through the brain, makes itself felt through the brain. Two, as the coherent force, it is that significant essential quality which makes each man different, which produces that complex manifestation of moods, desires, qualities, complexes, inhibitions, feelings, and characteristics, which produce a man's peculiar psychology. This is the result of the interplay between the spirit or energy aspect and the matter or body nature. This is the distinctive subjective man, his coloring or individual note. This it is which sets the rate of vibratory activity of his body, produces his particular type of form, is responsible for the condition and nature of his organs, his glands, and his outer aspect. This is the soul, and in its lowest aspect, it works through the emotional or astral nature and in connection with the dense physical through the heart. Excuse me. Three, as the activity of the atoms and cells of which the physical body is composed. It is the sum total of those little lives of which the human organs comprising the entire man are composed. These have a life of their own and a consciousness which is strictly individual and identified. This aspect of the life principle works through the etheric or vital body and in connection with the solid mechanism of the tangible form through the spleen. It is not, of course, possible to give the mantric words or phrases which are mentioned in Rule 11. They would be profoundly incomprehensible to all but the initiate, and therefore need not engross our attention. It should be noted that much in these instructions is in advance of modern thought, and both these instructions and the Treatise on Cosmic Fire will only be fully understood towards the end of this century. Let us consider this rule sentence by sentence and arrive at that one of the interpretations which is the easiest for the average aspirant. All these rules can be read from the standpoint of intelligent man and will mean but little. They can be read from the standpoint of the aspirant and will then convey certain practical ideas which are susceptible of daily application and can be wrought out in the crucible of life experience. They will achieve meaning as the aspirant learns to handle energies, to work in mental matter, and to cooperate creatively with the purpose underlying the evolutionary plan. From the angle of vision of the disciple, these rules carry certain potent instructions and will lead him to an understanding of the process of the creative work in nature, which is necessarily sealed to the mind of the aspirant. As to the comprehension of the initiate, these words convey definite commands which only his illumined intuition can rightly interpret. With the higher grades of intelligences, we need not concern ourselves. We will consider this rule, therefore, solely from the angle of vision of the average aspirant, leaving other interpretations to those individuals who have the internal equipment which will enable them to understand. 1. Ascertain the formula which will confine the lives within the ensphering wall. All forms in nature, as we well know, are made up of myriads of tiny lives, holding a certain measure of awareness, of rhythm, and of coherency according to the force of the law of attraction, utilized by the builder of the form. This is true both of the macrocosm and of the and of the infinite world of microcosmic lives, which are contained within the greater whole. Embryo solar systems, coming into being under the impulse of divine thought, are at first fluidic and nebulous, are shifting in outline, and are held together loosely by the central nucleus of energy, another way of expressing the embodied idea. As time progresses, they pass on to other conditions. They take more definite form, they enter into peculiar relations with allied and neighboring forms, and adjust themselves to varying relations of an internal nature with those forms, which in the earlier stage was not possible. Eventually, we find a solar system such as ours and myriads of others, a solar system functioning as a sun within its revolving and rotating planets, preserving their differing orbits, holding their stated and relative positions, active as independent and interdependent organisms, and yet presenting to the eye of the astronomer a coherence, a unity, and a structure that is unique in each case, and yet which functions under cosmic law. It measures up to some vast purpose, conceived and held steadily in the universal mind, which is in its turn an aspect of that group conscious and self-conscious entity who is the author of its being and the creator of its form. This one intelligent life may be posited as creating in his meditation, or its, if you prefer, for what do words matter when all is futile to express reality as it is? Okay, so this one intelligent life may be posited as creating in his meditation and consequently in his reflective mind, that which we call a thought form. This thought form has four main characteristics. The first, it is brought into being through the conscious use of the law of attraction. Second, it is formed of an infinite number of living entities who are attracted by the mind of the divine creator and thus enter into relation with each other. Third characteristic is the form is the externalization of something that its creator has either visualized, B, built intelligently and colored or qualified so as to meet the purpose for which it was intended, C, vitalized by the potency of his desire and the strength of his living thought, D, held in shape as long as it is needed in order to perform its specific work, and E, connected to himself by a magnetic thread of his living purpose and the strength of his dominant will. And then the fourth characteristic of these thought forms is this interior purpose, which has clothed itself in mental, astral, and vital substance, is potent on the physical plane just as long as A, it remains consciously in its creator's thought, B, it keeps its distance occultly from its creator. Many thought forms remain futile as they are too close to their creator. And C, it can be directed in any desired direction, and under the law of least resistance, can find its own place, thus performing its desired function and carrying out the purpose for which it was created. The formula, therefore, might be regarded as the idea emanating from the divine thinker. It might be defined as the dynamic purpose, the thing, as the thinker sees it and externalizes it in his mind and visualizes it as the carrier of his intent. The mathematics which underlie the construction of a bridge, such as any of the great spans which signalize human achievement, convey not to the uninitiated, but to those who know and understand. They are the bridge itself, reduced to its essential terms. They are the bridge in latency, and in these mathematical formulas lie hid the purpose, the quality, and the form of the completed structure and its eventual usefulness. So it is with the concepts and the ideas which give birth to a thought form. These occult formulas exist on the archetypal plane, which for the aspirant is the plane of the intuition, though in reality it is a state of consciousness far higher still.
Hey, what a great analogy here. What a great way to provide understanding for this. That's something that should be pulled out of there, I want to say, and added to my notes somewhere, because that's huge, man.
Yeah. Well, we're all architects, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a beautiful way, such a simple way to be able to see the depth of it there. All the way up to going all the way up the chart, because you can see where the intuitional plane is, being the Buddhic plane there, right? It started all the way down, it started all the way up there, and it's got to make its way all the way down. But really, he's saying it started higher than that. So it came from what we would assume to be the will, spiritual will.
Mm-hmm.
The monad of our Father. It came from the Father. It's his will. And yeah, it's great.
Because looking back, I'm just comparing that to the chart we have up there. So it's saying here these occult formulas exist on the archetypal plane, which for the aspirant is the plane of the intuition, which is the Buddhic plane, right?
Yeah, that's that's after the essentially that's a pretty high level of
it is, but then it goes on to say, though in reality it is a state of consciousness far higher still, so it's even coming from higher than that.
Yeah,
I think that's what it's saying.
Yeah, no, that's how I read it. It's coming from the Father, and it's working its way all the way down that chart, into the concrete mental plane of the person who's drawing those, drawing the what do you call it, the architectural designs, right? The graphic designer, the designer. That's coming all the way down into the concrete mental, which would be where that mental unit sits. 1, 2, 3. I thought it was even on the plane just above that, but anyway, and then it has to work its way all the way into physical manifestation from there. But while you're looking at it from the higher, you can see the unbelievable depth of where that thought form, came from. Because it more or less, it would come from, and now correct me if I'm wrong, see if I can say this properly. It come from the will to bridge something, like to connect two things.
Mhm.
Like we got to connect these. We have to unite these two somehow. And then, then how are we going to do that? And well, you have to build a bridge, because it seems like this bridge building is inherent in us, essentially.
Mhm.
We're building the Antikarana, we're going from one rung of the ladder to the next. And it works its way into the physical plane, because you have to actually develop the means to do it. Yeah, it's intense. It's a lot. So that's the whole, it just ran the gamut of the whole chart, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Where did I leave off here? These formulas underlie a world of forms and must be contacted by those who are duly equipped to work under the great architect of the universe. There are, symbolically speaking, 3 great books of formulas. Note the words symbolically speaking and forget them not. There is first the Book of Life, read and eventually mastered by initiates of all degrees. There is the Book of Divine Wisdom, read by aspirants of all degrees, sometimes called the Book of Knowing Experience. And there is the Book of Forms, which is compulsory reading for all in whom the intelligence is awakening to functioning activity. It is with the Book of Forms that we are now concerned. Pentageli speaks in one place of the rain cloud of knowable things, of which the soul is consciously aware. The aspirant, weary of the eternal round of his own futile and unimportant thoughts, seeks to tap the resources of this rain cloud, and so precipitate upon the earth some of the thoughts of God. He seeks to work so that he can further the manifestation of the ideas of the Creator. To do this, he has to fulfill certain initial requirements, which might be briefly stated as follows. The first, know the true meaning of meditation. 2, align with facility the soul, the mind, and the brain. Third, contemplate or function as the soul on its own plane. It then becomes possible for the soul to act as the intermediary between the plane of divine ideas and the mental plane. You see how this matter of participation in the divine creative process works out as the objective of all true meditation work? Contemplate or function as the soul on its own plane. It then becomes possible for the soul to act as the intermediary between the plane of divine ideas and the mental plane. Help me understand that one, my friend.
So we're just kind of pulling all of that together in meditation, I want to
Yeah,
say.
okay.
And ultimately, that quietness that comes reveals I want to say reveals the what's needed to the brain,
Right.
right? By the bridge, ultimately, but in a sense, right?
What is the plane of divine ideas?
That would.
Is that everything above the mental? Oh no, that's the first. Okay, divine.
Yeah.
Up at the top of the chart here. Okay. Wow. So the soul becomes the intermediary between this all the way down. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, because then we're looking at the spiritual triad there too. being, where a lot of this is happening. It's receiving this at the top and bringing it all the way down into the mind down here. And then the intuition is that knowingness from it, right? That's coming down. So I guess it's almost like the soul's looking up and down at the, up, out, and down at the same time, in a way.
Okay, well, the fourth is register the idea received by the soul intuitively and recognize the form which it should take. These last 7 words are of vital importance. Recognize the form which it should take. Fifth, reduce the vague and misty idea to its essentials, discarding all vain imaginings and the formulations of the lower mind, so equipping oneself to leap readily into activity and through steadfastness in contemplation, receive accurately the vision of the inner structure or of the subjective skeleton, if I may so term it, of the form which is to be. 6, this, as recorded consciously by the soul upon the mind, is as consciously registered by the mind, held steady in the light, and might be regarded as the reduction of the formula to the blueprint. It is not the formula itself, but the secondary process. According to the strength, the simplicity, and the clarity of the embodiment of the formula in the simple outline structure, so will be the finally furnished building and the consequent form, which will continue within the periphery of the outer form itself, the lives used in its construction. This, in reality, resembles the stage of conception. Latent with the germs, the result of male-female interrelation, latent with the germs lie all the potencies and capacities of the finished product. Latent within the idea which has been materially conceived, but which has been inspired by the spirit aspect, lie hid the potencies of the finished thought forms. The matter aspect, represented by the mind, has been fecundated by the spirit aspect, and the triplicity will eventually be completed by the created form. But in the early stages, there is as yet only the formula, the conceived idea, the latent yet dynamic concept. It is potent enough to draw itself the essentials for growth and form, yet who shall say whether it will prove an abortion, a mediocre and feeble product, or a creation of real beauty and value? Every externalized idea is, therefore, possessed of form, animated by desire, and created by the power of the mind. The desire plane is the one upon which the mind imposes its conceptions in order to produce the idea incarnate, to clothe the idea in form. It is therefore the gestation ground. The mind previously has been the recipient of the archetypal idea as grasped and visualized by the soul. In its turn, the soul is the recipient of the formula as presented to it in the world of ideas. You have thus the presented idea, the perceived idea, and the formulated idea, and the idea working out into manifestation. It is well to bear in mind that the following factors govern the emergence of the idea out of the universal mind into the world of tangible forms. These are: 1, the energies emanating from the archetypal plane. This plane is the focus of the attention of the highest group of intelligences on our planet. Their consciousness can respond and be inclusive to this sphere of activity whereon the mind of God expresses itself, free from the limitations of what we understand as form. They are the custodians of the formula. They are the mathematicians who prepare the blueprints of the greater plan, They calculate the effects of the forces with which the work is carried forward and the energies which must be manipulated. They allow for the strains and stresses to which the forms must be subjected under the impact of the life force. They deal with the cyclic impulses to which the evolutionary process must respond. They concern themselves with the relation between the form aspect and the life urge. 2, the intuitional state of awareness. On this level of consciousness, we find the masters of the wisdom carrying on their work. And it is in this sphere of influence that they work with the greatest ease and facility, as much so as does normally intelligent man work on the physical plane. Their minds are constantly in touch with the archetypal minds, who are the custodians of the formulas, and they, taking the blueprints, I speak again in symbolic fashion, deal with the specifications. I can't read today. Deal with the specifications, look for those suitable for the control of the work, and assemble the needed personnel. Among their disciples, they search until they find the one most suited to be the focal point of information on the physical plane, or the group most eligible to carry into manifestation the desired part of the plan. They work with those so chosen, impressing upon their minds that eternal triplicity of idea, quality, form, until the details begin to emerge, and the work of what is literally a precipitation can go forward. Third, the activity of the mental state of consciousness. It is on the mental plane that much of this work is necessarily done, and here is reason sufficient for the development on the part of the aspirant of a trained intellect. The rain cloud of knowable things precipitates first of all on the mental plane, and a further precipitation goes forward when disciples and aspirants are the recipients. These latter, in their turn, seek to impress and guide the lesser workers and aspirants who, karmically or by choice, lie within their radius of influence. Thus, the idea presented is seized upon by many minds, and the formula aspect of the great work has played its part. It will be seen how this work is consequently and essentially group work, and is therefore only truly possible for those who have somewhat mastered the meditation process and can hold the mind steady in the light. This light in reality streams forth from the universal mind and is of varying kinds and was, esoterically speaking, generated in a previous solar system and must be used and developed in this one. In the words, the light of the intuition, we have conveyed to our minds that type of energy which embodies the purpose, the will of God, the plan as we regard it. In the words, the light of the soul, we have an expression which sums up the purpose, the plan, the will of those entities who, incarnated in human form and at times functioning out of the body, have the responsibility of materializing the divine concepts in the four kingdoms in nature. The human kingdom is par excellence the medium of expression for the universal mind, and when the sons of God in human form are perfected, the problems of the natural world will be solved in a large measure. The fully conscious sons of God, aware of themselves whilst in the human form, and they are few as yet, constitute literally the brain of the planetary life. There is a truly occult significance to the words to throw the light upon a problem, a condition, or a situation. In its essential meaning, it connotes the revelation of the presented idea, of the principle which underlies the outer manifestation. It is the recognition of the inner and spiritual reality which produces the outer and visible form. This is the keynote of all work in symbolism. The work of ascertaining the formulas, of drawing up the subjective charts or plans of intuitive impression and of intense activity on the mental plane is the sole work of the organized planetary hierarchy. The second phase of the work is carried on by those workers who, cooperating consciously with the hierarchy, demonstrate the reality of that work in the three worlds of human evolution. They bring the germ of the idea and the embryonic concept into outer and completed existence through the process of right thought, the awakening of desire, and the nurturing of right public opinion. They thus bring about the needed physical activity. Aspirants, group leaders, and thinkers in all parts of the globe can be available for this work, provided their minds are open and focused. According to the simplicity of their approach to the truth, according to the clarity of their thought, according to their group influence and state of inclusive awareness, and according also to their power for long sustained effort, will be the approximation of the outer form to the inner idea and the spiritual subjective reality. The point I seek to make,
You're about to get into a pretty big paragraph right there.
Oh yeah. Something you want to say?
We're looking at this chart, and as you're reading, we can see how the chart is playing out here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you see the spiritual will as it comes down, and then it's reaching the intuitional levels, and it's working with the hierarchy there, and then it comes down into the mind of the, you know, of the initiate working at the high level of the mental permanent atom there, and then reaching us down here in the lower three.
Right.
Eventually being sent down. It's like a repeaters, right? It's like a repeater, like sending this forward.
Mm-hmm.
A reflection of a reflection of a reflection, as Carla always was saying, you know, used to say it. But what we end up with way down on the bottom, you know, unless it's done, you know, and things end up getting distorted in a way, you know, so you have to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
As those energies come down, you know, it's not going to get distorted by a disciple or an aspirant. It's going to get distorted by, you know, everybody else, you know, in a lot of ways, or those who want to use it for ugly purposes or whatnot, right?
Yeah. So is our soul like the relay station?
It's like the what is that? What's the word? Yeah, that's the mediator. It's the mediator between our Father and the body and the form, essentially. Which mediator and meditator are pretty dang close.
How about that?
Yeah. 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 This is all pretty deep stuff. And because, you know, we know that once you get into the spiritual triad, that is group consciousness.
Ooh, excuse me.
Down here, you know, it's quite different down below in these lower three.
Right.
But that fourth plane is always the bridging plane, essentially. Right? It bridges the higher three with the lower three.
Right.
That's the highest level of human. The human evolution is, you know, that reaching that level of intuition is the culmination of the human experience, essentially. And you're kind of done.
Mm-hmm.
That's the fourth initiation. And it's really where, you know, you're not non-returner, you know, you don't have to, basically, you know, you don't need the form anymore.
Right.
I think Carl would say. But so that's where we're trying to get to, where we're understanding these things intuitionally. But that's also very inclusive, but it's also group conscious. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's wild. You know, it's just it's deep. I don't know what to say. I don't have the right. I don't have the right words either. You know, the more we read and study, the less we end up knowing,
I was just gonna say.
because you don't need to know there because you're receiving intuition, essentially.
Right.
You're already doing, you're functioning properly. There's no point in really, you know, doing much more than reading these books. We're doing the right thing. Reading the books. That's what we got to do.
Whether
This
or
is
not
what-
you think you understand it.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, you know, Carlos must have said it 1,000 times. You know, don't really try to understand it either.
Right.
Just absorb it, and then
Yep.
you're invoking response, and it will come. You know,
Right.
and because I used to say a lot of times, you know, I ponder on sentence by sentence, line by line. And she's like, that's not what this is about. Or just absorb it.
Right. Because it could be a month, a couple weeks, several months.
Yeah, and you're not going to figure it
before-
out with your rational mind anyway.
Right. But it'll just come to you in a later state. Sometimes when you're not really expecting it, but then you just kind of reflect back. Oh yeah, okay, that's what that was.
That's what that was about. Yeah, and it's not like one line either. It's like a whole chapter, like chapters, like it's all meshed together, like you said, like, you know, and then all of a sudden you kind of get a chunk, or like a puzzle piece comes together and it flips itself over, and then you see it now. It's like,
Right.
whoa, okay. Yeah, so we don't need to really try to expand on these things too much. But she would say that these, you know, our commentary that we have is good and healthy because
Right.
it's perspective. You know, so it's all good.
All
But
right.
it's
So
just dumb, you know, we just get more and more dumbfounded or quiet as we go. And that's
Humbled.
good too. Yeah, the humble, quiet,
Yeah.
you know, the less we know, the better it is, because then we can really receive what's, you know, real. So sorry.
well, right. You can receive it without really. No, I lost what I was looking for.
Yeah,
but
because if you look at the intuition, dude, when you're sitting there, you're not thinking. That's not something you're like, I have to figure this out. You're not figuring out nothing. You're quiet, and whatever it is coming to you.
right.
And you have to be open for it to come.
Right.
And then we got to be smart enough to be able to bring it down into the mind and the brain consciousness. That's work. The work is, there's work involved in that, essentially. He went through it. I think it was on number 1, 2, and 3 of above, where he was kind of showing it coming down on its own there. Yeah.
This
It
one
was
here.
this 1,
Yeah.
2,
The
and
emergence of
3.
ideas.
Yeah, there's a very specific line there too that says, and then this precipitation goes forward. What he said is on the mental plane. Anyway, you can see how it's coming down, right? So 1 is up higher, it's coming down to the intuitional,
Yep.
and then working its way down into the mental.
Yep.
And yeah, and it's an interesting concept, because there's work happening, whether, you know, but you're not sitting there. We're not sitting there going, all right, I need to do this now. Now I need to do this. This is just it's happening, right? It's a natural process at some point, but we have to be familiar with it, at least to know it. Yeah, I'm not seeing the one part that I was exactly thinking of, but that's all right. But you can still see the 1, 2, and 3 as it comes
Yeah.
down.
It's an obvious kind of I guess, descalation.
Yeah, go up
Descaling
just a
through
little bit more again for me, just for a second.
a few lists before.
Oh, right here. This is what I was thinking about. Register the idea and then recognize the form it should take. So you recognize the idea, I want to say, on the intuitional level,
Mhm.
because you're open and you're doing, because you're clear and you're open. And then you see and you recognize the form that it should take. That also is including some received soul by the soul intuitively. Oh yeah, well obviously
Yeah.
I didn't even, okay, so I'm not far off on this then. And then recognize the form that it should take, also part of the intuition, and then bringing it down again. So I want to say up here, you're looking at bridging 1, 2, and 3 using number 4 with 5 and 6. He's always doing these patterns over and over, building them into us, into our mind, so it becomes really easy to start recognizing this associated with the planes on the chart too.
Mhm.
Yeah, and not even just the planes as they are, and I'm not saying I understand this either. I'm saying we should be looking at the subplanes of those planes as well. When if we're understanding these things in an advanced way, potentially. All right. Yeah, anyway.
Where were we? This very long paragraph here, right?
Yes, sir. Wait, how much?
Okay.
Yeah, we're doing good. Yeah.
Yep. The point I seek to make is that the average reader of these instructions has nothing to do with the formulas. They are grasped and understood by the great knowers who stand back of the evolutionary process and are responsible for its functional activity. The hierarchy of masters, of the senior initiates and disciples, is proceeding steadily with that work, but is dependent under the law upon those on the physical plane who are to produce the outer forms. If they fail to respond, there will be delay or incorrect building. If they make mistakes, there will be lost time and energy and again delay. If they lose interest and cease to work, or are primarily interested in their own affairs and personalities, the plan will have to wait, and energy which would otherwise be made available for the solving of human problems and the guidance of humanity will have to find its outlet in other directions.
Boy, is that powerful, huh?
Yeah, especially that last one there. I mean,
that is some intense stuff. I mean, we see this, and I don't want to say unfortunately or fortunately, but how do we get sidetracked, and opportunity lost, but the show goes on one way or another at some
right.
point, it does. So yeah, anyway, that's deep stuff. I think we can all probably see and feel that though, and see that this is absolutely true.
Right. Well, and I think this alludes to the whole, the collective whole, having
and individuals who are supposed to be doing the work.
Well, but I'm including those individuals as a part of this collective whole, but they're individuals who might be geared towards their own personal affairs and the interest in their own personal affairs and personality. So selfish gain, which is holding the entire collective, which I mean everything and everybody, as the plan kind of moving the way it's supposed to. So it's like the bad seeds in the apple hold back the whole bunch, right? In a way.
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously this is a team. It's a team effort. And the more who show up for the game, the better.
Right. But I think the point here is eventually it has to be everybody
right,
showing up for the game and actually playing,
right.
for the betterment
They
of the
gotta,
whole team.
yeah, they gotta know that there's a game being played first,
Right.
and then
And then
make,
they
like
have,
you said, make your choice,
right.
right?
And then realize it's a game being played for the benefit of the team and not just themselves.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so,
Wow.
all right. So
There is never.
there is never anything static in the creative process. Energy which is flowing forth in the pulsation of the one life and its rhythmic and cyclic activity, never ending and never resting, must be somewhere utilized and must find its way in some direction. Often, when man fails in his duty, with catastrophic results. The problem of cataclysms, the cause, for instance, of the steadily increasing insect peril, will be found to be related to the inflow of unused and unrecognized energy, which is capable of right direction and right purpose, and for the furthering of the plan, if the aspirants and disciples of the world will shoulder their group responsibilities, submerge their personalities, and achieve true realization. Humanity must be more diligent and more intelligent in the working out of its true destiny and karmic obligations. When men are universally en rapport with the custodians of the plan, and their minds and brains are illumined by the light of the intuition of the soul and of the universal mind, when they can train themselves to respond intelligently to the timely impulses which cyclically emanate from the inner side of life, then there will be a steady adjustment between life and form and a rapid immemorialization of world conditions. It is an interesting point to bear in mind that the first effect of the response of the more advanced of the sons of men to the formulas are translated and transmitted by the knowers. Let me start that one over. It is an interesting point to bear in mind that the first effect of the response of the more advanced of the sons of men to the formulas as translated and transmitted by the knowers will be the establishing of right relations between the four kingdoms of nature, and right relations between units and groups in the human family. A step in this direction is being made. Relations between the four spheres of activity, which we call human, animal, vegetable, and mineral, are now badly adjusted because the energy of matter is primarily the governing factor. In the human kingdom, the working of this energy demonstrates in what we call selfishness. In the animal kingdom, it demonstrates in what we call cruelty, though where the sense of responsibility is non-existent and only instinctual and temporary parental responsibility is found, there is no criticism to be given. In the vegetable kingdom, this maladjustment expresses itself during the planetary period of misuse and disease.
Period of wait, hold
Yeah.
in the vegetable kingdom, this maladjustment expresses itself during this planetary period of as disease.
Yeah.
Hmm. All right, okay. Sorry, I think he's about to explain it.
This surprises you? Disease has its roots primarily in maladjustments and misdirected force in the vegetable kingdom. This affects the animal and mineral kingdoms and subsequently the human. It is too far ahead for this to be demonstrated, but when this condition is understood, it will be in that kingdom in nature that the attention of the investigators must be focused, and the eradication of disease will eventually find its solution. So we're on numeral. Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot going on there.
Yeah. How long have we been reading? Do we
About
have
1 hour, right about an hour.
Because we're about to work into the second sentence. How long is this? I'm wondering if this might be a good break.
Okay.
Because just that first sentence is quite a bit to take in. Would you not agree?
Yeah, no, it's certainly, it's a lot.
Yeah.
That's these expressions, they're just these, there's always it starts with the idea and the reason, and then you've got the meaning behind it, and these are coming down and
Mhm.
expressing downward, and we're viewing the spiritual result of this process, right? In terms of, significant, events and whatnot. Like he's talking about these diseases. Like these are the results of group energy use
Right.
or something, right?
Or
Like
misuse. Right.
humanity as a whole is driving, what we're viewing on a daily basis, the collective,
Hmm.
but it's stemming from, you know, from these other planes and the energies and planets, the energies of the planets, and how these things are working out in the solar system, and and how they're interpreted by the spiritual hierarchy, or the in the spiritual triad, and how we're receiving these. It's just a process of reflection, how it's received, in order to that thought form can be bundled, and then that thought form is bundled, sent out to be received, and through the intuition of the workers, and then how it's received and then put into motion is the result that we end up seeing. But we can mistaken these things and the expressions of these things, and if we're not ready, we can go about the sideways and byways and taking the long road and getting stuck and sucked
Hmm.
back into materialism and our own selfishness,
Right.
and expressing these things in all sorts of perverted, strange ways. An interesting thing is that in that book we were talking about earlier, the life and teaching of the
Mm.
masters, and what it's called, I'm gonna read it again. Life and teaching of the masters of the Far East. Commercialism is a divine idea.
Mm.
But we can see how that has become a crazy overstimulated, materialism on our part,
Right.
because we're not balancing these. We're not reacting appropriately. We're just letting it. It's running off. It's this inertia or something, and runs off. It controls us instead of us controlling it.
Hmm.
When that divine idea would have, could potentially lead to, proper trade, so that everybody on earth has what is
So
needed.
everybody benefits, right? And not just the
Right.
few selective
Yeah. As
upper
opposed to
echelon
this.
elite.
Right.
So that's interesting. So does it mention, I haven't read it yet, and I will. Does it go into, is it just speak to commercialism in relation to capitalism, or is it, or would
Um,
capitalism be the perversion of
oh
what they're
yeah.
speaking?
Yeah. So we're going all the way back to the divine idea,
Hmm.
right? Like we want to go all the way back, like in, what was it, number up top where you were at in this, it was like number 4. right? You get the idea and then the recognition
Let
of
me scroll back up
the
there.
form that it's supposed to take. Right,
First book,
but
right.
as this progresses on, it can be these things can be very perverted. Not, you know, in the real sense of perverted, you know.
I'll do that later. What was that step up here?
I think, yeah, 4, I think it was, right? Register
Register
the
the
idea
idea.
so that you get the divine
Received by the soul
idea.
into and recognize the form which it should take.
Like we now recognize the form which commercialism would take.
Right.
But it, you know, as we probably as we go down, you know, you're looking at it being taken over, and the outer expression becoming very selfish.
Well, that could explain a lot of the problems that we have in the world today, is that, because it says right here, the last 7 words are of vital importance, and
Yeah,
we've allowed those forms to take shape, or we've allowed the ideas to be formulated in a very perverted way, or they've just kind of evolved that way over time through selfish means, probably. So it's just very, yeah, wow.
yeah, you know, and they even said, and this is, you know, very long time ago, that he says, as I see it, the commercial bondage will, in a few years, become the greatest bondage of all. If it goes on at the rate it is now progressing, it will dominate man, soul, and body, and it cannot do otherwise than consume itself and those that are interested in it.
Mhm.
There is no question but that the first inception of commercialism was on a high spiritual plane, but materialism was allowed to creep in until the very power used to create is the power that will consume. Until the very power used to create is the power that will consume, just as the very power used to create will always consume if not used rightly. Now, this is exactly what DK is talking about here with the insects.
Mm.
If we don't use, I mean, essentially, on the power, you know, this
Right there.
yeah, this is
So
exactly
values
what's
are
being said in this book.
Oh, what happened there? Didn't mean to do that.
And he goes on, he says, is not this done by simply realizing, I mean, I say, if not rightly, let's see. Power used to create is the power that will consume, just as the very power used to create will always consume if not used rightly. Is not the pressing of commercialism and limitations upon us crowding us on to see that we must come up over or overcome these conditions? So now that they're here, we have to overcome them. Is not this done by simply realizing that we are to do the perfect works of God, to raise our consciousness to the Christ consciousness? Is not this what Jesus taught us here on earth? Does not his whole life exemplify this?
Right.
It's a little tiny thing on my. It's hard to read. It's hard to read it. But
Oh, you haven't gotten the books yet?
no,
Yeah.
not yet. But it's just amazing, you know, all these ideas that we're looking at are, you know, the original idea is divine.
Mm-hmm.
And then we take it, it works its way down, probably still divine, was being expressed divinely by Jesus and Christ and Buddha, and it comes out beautiful, and then it gets taken, and next thing you know, it's churchianity is sticking out their hands so they can build another wing to the church.
Right.
In a weird, you see what I mean there? And that in no way was the original intent
Right.
of build my church. Just crazy. But, it's good that we're working our way back now to these understandings, at least.
Right. Yeah.
We're coming out of the dense grossness of our filth that we were
That
wallowing
we've
in.
created. Right. Over time.
It's intense.
It's
But a lot of
intense.
these things are necessary, I mean, it's all. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. All right, buddy.
We covered a lot today, even though we only covered the analysis of the first sentence. So I don't know where that took us. I think it was page right at the top, page 463 in the blue book.
Yeah.
Don't know where that is in the PDF, but we can reference that for folks next week.
All right, let me mark that. 464 I saw, right? Is that right?
Top of 463.
Yep. Okay.
Sentence 2. So we'll pick up there next week.
Sounds good.
Actually, I'm going to be offline next week, but maybe you and I should try to get together and still make a video so we can get something out there for folks.
Yeah, well, and then we want to get that video with Carla done as well. So
Yep. Yeah. So again, folks have questions about astrology, take a look at that other video and drop some questions in the comments, and we'll work to get those answered for you. Yeah.
All right, let's
Great.
do it. We'll
Sounds
see you
good.
next week.